It's BC. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about last night's crazy episode of Game of Thrones, Season 8, Episode 3, The Long Night. And holy crap, was that a long-ass episode. Almost 2 hours, I'm sure, for those of you who watch it live on HBO. For those of us on HBO now, it was for about an hour and 35 minutes, so still a pretty long-ass episode. So, before we get into it, thank you so much for joining me today on my channel for another reaction review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, hit the bell to keep up with all of my latest content. If you want to connect on the socials, find me on Twitter at Brandon Cassiano, also on Instagram at Brandon_Cassiano. And if you want to see any of my other works, check out my website, BrandonCassiano.com. I am also doing reactions for this show and probably other shows on the Stardust app. You can find me there at the official BC. Now, let's get into this episode because, again, there was so much. I think I've never felt so much grief or just like hopelessness. Like, again, the Red Wedding was one hell of an episode and I was destroyed by that. Last night, though, I was just a broken human being. I was just like, there was so much death. There was just this complete and utter sense of hopelessness in the episode that I haven't felt in a long ass time. But despite how horrible so much of that was, I mean, not that it was bad writing, it was good. It was good stuff, good content. But man, did I feel horrible about it. So we're going to talk about some of the moments in the episode that I liked the most. Starting from the very beginning, we see a shadowy figure come out of nowhere, and it's Melisandre. Somehow she's managed to slip past all of the White Walkers and get to the armies of Winterfell safely. I'm not sure how she did that, some kind of enchantment, I'm sure. She gets there and she tells Jorah to tell the Dothraki to raise their swords. And I'm like, why? What are you gonna do? Like, gonna give them some magic? What's gonna happen? And she did. She gave them some freaking magic. She walked up, or she rode up to one of the Dothraki, Raki. Sorry, my pronunciation's been weird today. And she grabs his sword, not to be taken weirdly, grabs his sword and she uses this really long incantation and she lights every single Dothraki sword on fire, just from the one. She only grabbed the one sword and they all just like in a row, in a wave, lit on fire. So for me, this was like a glimmer of hope because I'm thinking, okay, they're gonna pull out all the stops. Again, my pronunciation, I'm not sure what that is, but they're gonna pull out all the stops and there's a good chance they're gonna get out of this thing alive. Not huge chance, but there's a chance now with magic on their side. And I loved it. Unfortunately, that glimmer of hope was very quickly dashed because there were a lot of White Walkers, but I liked that this other element came, and this wasn't the only time she helped out, because later on when they're all falling back to get shelter behind the walls of Winterfell, they can't light the brigade surrounding the walls, the spikes, the wooden spikes that are doused in oil. So she decides to go out there herself. She lays her hands on one of them and she lights that on fire too. So again, a great moment with Melisandre. I like that she's coming back and she has several moments in the episode where she gives us some hope. Unfortunately, a lot of those moments are again quickly dashed because again, a lot of White Walkers, but I really enjoyed her presence. She did add this constant optimism, which I really appreciated considering how grief-stricken and hopeless I felt throughout the entire episode. So the next moment I really liked was the aerial scene with the dragons fighting, trying to navigate this mystical blizzard that's come out of nowhere, which is making the battle for the Unsullied and the Dothraki like 10 times harder than it already was. But we see Daenerys with Drogon and Jon with Rhaegal. They're going through this massive blizzard that I'm pretty sure the Night King has somehow created. I'm not sure what all of his powers are, and he shows off some pretty impressive powers in this episode. But I'm guessing one of them is creating a blizzard, and all of a sudden he appears out of nowhere on the back of Viserion, and they have this really intense, really beautiful aerial battle. Just them trying to get an upper hand with the Night King and Viserion, who is a lot stronger now. He's a lot more capable, obviously, with all of this mystical upgrade, basically. And ultimately, Jon, or I should say Rhaegal, manages to do some damage to Viserion, and plus he's a corpse already, so it's not doing, so he's not all that put together anymore anyway. But Rhaegal manages to bite several holes in Viserion's neck and also like bites off half of his jaw. So Viserion kind of loses control of his flame breath, which comes in handy later on. But Viserion does manage to wound Regal pretty bad. At this point, I'm not sure, we don't know if he's alive or dead, because he was just kind of clawed all the way down his stomach, so we're not sure where Regal is, if he's still alive or not. The dragons also came in clutch for the battle itself down on the ground, because again, there were so many White Walkers that the Dothraki and Unsullied had to fall back to Winterfell. But the dragons came in and they started lighting all the White Walkers on fire, which was great. And it was so spectacular because, again, this mystical blizzard had come in out of nowhere. And whenever the dragons would blast the White Walkers with their fire, that updraft and heat would cause the clouds of this blizzard to just like become a tunnel. It looked really, really cool. I really appreciated the visual effect that the team for this episode went for, because it really paid off well. This was a fantastically written and visual episode. If you haven't seen it yet, take my word for it. Fantastic episode. Now, my next I love this moment because it's so beautiful, but it's so sad. And it involves young Lady Mormont, who, as you know from last episode, she is not going to hide in the crypt. She is there to lead her men, so she is going to be in the battle. And so the White Walkers start to invade Winterfell. The defenses are faltering. She's in the courtyard with some of her men, and one of the White Walker giants comes in through the gate, and at first she just gets swatted, and you think she's dead, but she's not. She's still alive. But afterwards we see her still looking at this giant. She decides, and she's already kind of battered up from that just like little swat, because she's tiny, but she's a warrior at heart. And this was just like, you know what, like, I know what's gonna happen, but I have to watch because I need to see this bravery unfold. So she grabs an axe, and she just, with this so it's like a small, but it's just like so powerful battle cry, and she runs at this giant. He stops her with one hand, and he picks her up, and he starts to crush her body with his hand. But then in the last moment, she takes the dagger that she's picked up, and she stabs his one eye. And I guess by destroying the eyes of the White Walkers, and I may have missed this from previous encounters with the White Walkers, if you destroy their eyes, they fall. Because this giant was down. He was dead. But of course she was dead too, because her body was crushed. It was such a heart-wrenching and heartbreaking moment, because we see this brave young woman who is there to lead her faction of an army, who just fearlessly, because she knows there's nothing else she can do, she has to fight, even if it's going to be the one thing she does and it costs her her life. It was a beautifully sad thing to watch, and that's why it's one of my favorite moments in the episode. Of a massively intense episode, this had to be one of my favorites, because it was just a beautiful moment. Again, heartbreaking, but beautiful moment. Now, another part that I really liked comes in with Arya. Arya, of course, is a badass. She's been holding her own. She's got that special weapon that she had Gendry make her, which is like a two-sided spear, but it comes in half because she knows how to dual wield and fight with both hands. So she's just bossing a lot of these White Walkers. She's killing them out. Arya finds herself, I believe it's in the same room where in the last episode we got to see Brienne get knighted by Jaime. Now, so she, the Hound, and Melisandre are still alive, and Melisandre, again, bringing a glimmer of hope. This one that does not get dashed, and I'll get to that later. But she tells Arya that her fate is to put many eyes to sleep forever. Brown eyes, green eyes, and blue eyes. And so as the White Walkers are banging on the door to this room, Melisandre asks her, "What do we tell the God of Death?" And Arya says, "Not today." So, and that will lead me into my final favorite moment, but I'll get to that later. But thank you, Melisandre, for being there, for giving us some hope when we really, really need it. So we get back to Theon, and most of the other archers have died. Actually, they have all died, besides Theon. Theon becomes this one-man army defending Bran's body, and he takes down almost every White Walker that initially began in that particular fight. He is alone standing now, surrounded by the other archers who died, and the White Walkers that he took out to defend Bran, who's still warging somewhere. I'm not sure where he is at this point. We saw that he used the Ravens to find the Night King, but then we don't know what he's doing after that. So that battle's over, but now the Night King has appeared with those older generals that he turned into White Walkers way back when, and we're like, oh god, he's gonna get Bran. There's no way Bran's getting out of this, because the only thing between Bran and the Night King is Theon, and we know Theon's gonna die. But thankfully Theon has this moment where he looks back at Bran, and Bran says, you're a good man, thank you. And Theon, of course, rushes in, tries to get a hit in on the Night King. The Night King grabs his spear and breaks it, grabs Theon, and then shoves the spear right through Theon's armor. Theon's dead. And we're just like, this is gonna happen. Bran's gonna die. Bran's gonna die. And I love how they built this up. As the Night King gets up to Bran and goes for his sword, we see one of the generals behind the Night King, his hair is like whooshed by like a little rush of wind. We're like, what is that? What is he looking at? And then over the shoulder shot, looking behind the Night King, comes freaking Arya. Arya's about to say, not today, but the Night King's good, so he swims around real fast. Swims, I'm not sure why I said swims. He twists around real fast, grabs her by the throat, and then grabs her hand, which is holding the Valyrian steel blade. But recall that little trick she pulled on Brienne last season when she was sparring with Brienne in the courtyard. What did she do? She tossed her blade to the other hand while her first hand was being occupied. So she drops that Valyrian blade. The Night King's two hands are already busy, so unless he's got the ability to grow another freaking limb, he's screwed. And by the way, he's screwed. She catches the other blade in her right hand, shoves it into his gut right where his armor is parted, and that mofo explodes. And at this moment, Jon is about to be roasted alive by Viserion, who has just been going ham on the walls of Winterfell. But Arya skewers the Night King with the Valyrian blade. He explodes. The generals behind him explode as well. All of the Night Walkers start to drop because she's gotten the Night King, and without him, they all fall. And just about as Viserion's about to rear back and roast Jon Snow alive or freeze. Does his flame now freeze, or is it just really hot flame? Anyone in the comments, let me know if you know for sure. I'm not actually sure. Does a white dragon's flame burn or freeze? Is it cold or hot? Let me know in the comments. But right when Viserion's about to attack Jon, it falters. He's just a corpse now. So the Night King is defeated. Arya came in clutch as hell for this episode, and I've always loved her, and this is just the solidification on my love for Arya. And it should be yours too. I'm just saying, you might have another favorite character. I got some friends who like Cersei, and I get it. Cersei's like, I love to hate her, but Arya's like my main bitch. You go, Maisie. You go, Maisie Williams. Arya, my main bitch. That's my girl. If I'm in a tough situation, that's the one I'm gonna call. She's not real, but I'm gonna call her anyway. I'm gonna try to call her out. Anyway, so with the Night King dead, that means Cersei is, and I guess in a way, properly should be, the final boss battle for this show. So how that builds up, anyone's guess at this point. I might react to the sneak peek for episode 4 later on today. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm thinking about it, but I'll let you know in the future if I decide to do that. But for now, those were my favorite moments of the show. But those were my favorite moments of this episode of Game of Thrones. If you have any that I didn't mention in this video, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you haven't yet. If you're brand new to the channel, it helps me out a lot. Thank you so much. I will be back later today with another reaction to something else. So I will talk to you later. Have a good day. Bye.